Welcome to Global Tax Talks Tax in 60 Seconds. I'm Will Morris, and here are some things to watch out for in the coming week. After a frenetic few weeks, last week was slightly calmer, although with some recurrent themes. So expect to hear more talk about exactly where the UN process is going after the wrap-up of the organizational meeting in New York. The decision to adopt two-thirds voting on the protocols, but simple majority voting on the convention itself, points to difficult times ahead. Obviously, that was one of the reasons why the US withdrew, and I'll come back to that. But many other developed countries also expressed reservations, although stayed in the room. And without those countries signing up to the final convention, admittedly still almost 3 years away, it will be, as the saying goes, one hand clapping. I think it's worth noting, however, that the US withdrew not only over the voting issue, but also over concerns relating to tax sovereignty. Now, you can't help but notice the mirror image complaint of so many developing countries regarding the OECD two-pillar process, which only strengthens my belief that it's going to be very difficult for a single international organization to get to any type of multilateral convention that all countries will agree to. In the same way that the two-pillar agreement could, rather crudely, be viewed as the rich countries' wish list, the UN's might be regarded as the developing and emerging countries list. I suspect it will still take a few years to move to the point where the UN and the OECD can negotiate with each other, assuming that major members such as the US stay under the umbrella of at least one of the organizations. And that's not great news for tax certainty in the short term. But in the medium to long term, that could put us in the relatively stable, if not exactly harmonious state, not unlike the Cold War, where the OECD and the UN could hammer out some common operating rules to allow two quite different sets of economies to coexist. We'll see. A couple of other things very briefly to note. Expect to hear more about the relative lack of ambition of the EU work plan relating to tax for the coming year. There's nothing really on tax in that other than a review of the Anti-Tax Avoidance Directive. Now, this may represent tax directive fatigue after several rather energetic years, but it may also represent another sign of the rebalancing between anti-avoidance proposals and the need for growth. And by the way, if they're looking for suggestions in that department, the Indian budget continues to get favorable reviews for its pro-growth measures, including a presumptive tax regime that promises tax certainty to non-residents providing specified services and technology, and a new scheme of multi-year transfer pricing audits. Anyway, thanks for joining me, and come back next week so that you stay global tax ready.